Let's get started, Andy. So firstly, I'd like to thank you for agreeing to sitting down with us, and for you guys to giving up your time as well. What we are talking about today is closing the loop. So nowadays, end user compute, and I've been doing end user compute for almost 30 years now, and been involved from the kind of get-go of device acquisition, how we've then distributed those devices and where those struggles have been, and then also how we've kind of retired them at the end of their life and what decisions we came across to make those. And I'm joined here by Andy Gomarsall. Do you want to there's a little
So just as thank you, Gav, for the opportunity in spreading the love and the world that I now exist in, which is what we term urban mining. So I'm executive director of N2S, I'm a shareholder as well, and I lead on all of the strategy around the partnerships and the channels of business for the future, really sustainable business, and that's what we lead on.
And actually, I mean, that really kind of talks to us coming together. So I'm Gavin Cockburn. I lead ViadexOne, which is our end user compute platform and service, which is a combination of MDLS, which is managed device lifecycle services, which is kind of acquisition and the lifecycle of those devices. And we complement that with DEX, which is digital employee experience. So really understanding what's going on those devices so we can make much more informed decisions on when devices are underperforming and ultimately when they should be recycled. And you're at the kind of front end of that, then recycling.
The front end of the back end.
Yeah, front end of the back end. Perfect. All right. So what we were going to do here is we'll talk over the next kind of 45 minutes or so. And please, there are questions that we can do at the end. So if there's anything that you want to dig a little deeper into, let us know. And then we'll kind of come to those as well. And then we'll be following up this session with a playbook. So ultimately, how you could get started if you haven't already on becoming that kind of circular use of end user compute. And while we're talking end user compute with Andy today, you do other
all the tech domains, frankly. I think when you describe it seems kind of old fashioned, but people will know disposal as the WE directive, which is waste electronics equipment. So that's everything with a plug, effectively. But our focus is on technology, so all the tech domains in technology and business, B2B.
Brilliant. So we're going to cover three main topics. So what both Andy and I have seen in our career, which potentially where you are now, and we'll dig into where the future and why people are now talking about it more than they ever have done before. And then ultimately, I think where the future is going to go longer term in the kind of 3 to 5 years out and beyond. So end user compute. So what we see in the real world, and this is really where device refresh has always been time bound. And that's always kind of linked around potential warranty refresh replacements or just a line in the sand that every 3 years we would give a new device to an existing user. And that's fine. There is no right or wrong reason, but the impact of that, and we're talking waste as a whole. So not just the kind of material waste and the carbon around that as well. There's the time investment to manage those, to do kind of user provisioning and changing of those devices, but also things like software. And with the DEX element, we can kind of cover all that. And often, and say I've seen it firsthand, where there'll be devices put into a cupboard and they'll be there for 3 months or they'll be there for 3 years until they can't physically put any more in those cupboards, and then they'll resell them. And there's so much residual value in those devices that they are ultimately missing out on.
It was a friend of mine that worked in a reseller called it the room of doom, which and then it's sort of like just the cupboards full of crap, they would say, and you're like, well, it's actually not. There's lots of critical raw materials in there. You're sort of trying to bring life to the end of life in a way, and it's always sort of when I first started in my career in this industry, it was always soul destroying, that people were just literally linear economy, we're literally throwing it out. So yeah, there's plenty of that in every customer, really, realistically.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, half the time as well, there's no kind of validation that it is underperforming. And it could be underperforming because actually it's just been given to the wrong person to begin with. A standard laptop was given to a software developer, well, potentially unsuitable. And actually, now that you can measure that, it would have been fine in any other situation from a knowledge worker. So don't get rid of it and put it in a cupboard and get a brand new one for the knowledge worker. Reutilize that as well. And we got kind of metrics off the back of it.
I think it's quite funny because in this generation, you get that feedback when the person said, "I'm not working with that, so I'm not going to work for you. I leave."
and that's becoming more. With as younger generations come into the workforce, they're much more correct. Kind of brand. Or at least the kind of the sentiment that I get is that they're more brand focused, and they will join the company that provides them the best technology, because 100%. At the end of the day, they're there to do the work that they want to work there to employ and
want to work efficiently. So
exactly,
give me the right device.
So I mean, you see kit coming in from these kind of organizations. What generally do you see as those pallets arrive around how people are recycling, or what they're recycling, and what decisions they've made off the back of that process?
Well, you won't be shocked to understand it's a myriad of answers, realistically. Some of it is deeply frustrating because a lot of the value is taken away by sort of lax, if you like, and not joined up thinking, and if it's a refresh that's happened, and they've sort of done it at the last minute, then there's no time, so they literally throw it in corners. So we've seen elements where reusable screens, that people, and I've been in certain industries where people will have 6 screens, just to one employee, rather than just the one or two, and literally I can't do anything with them because they have been thrown in a corner or thrown in a cage, or they've just not been properly dealt with. So I have no choice. It's part of the our role is to perform circular economy. We've lived for so long in a linear economy where we just think we've got lots of this stuff, lots of material, we could just make it in a linear way, and then we'll just throw it away, right? So it's like linear economy is take from the earth, make something, and then bin it. And what's scary in today's world is, and I keep referencing, we are in 2025 and we still use these analogies with zero to landfill. No one is talking about the reuse element. And even before that, actually, how are we manufacturing this product? Are we using circular economies to make sure that it's repairable and it can last longer? The answer is we are not, because we are seeing still strategic obsolescence because of the nature of the industry and where it's sat. We need to sell more of it to make our share price go up, right? So we're still in a linear economy, and I know that because if anyone's interested, you can Google the circular economy. It's a CGR. And so it's a reporting global.
We'll put that in the playbook then.
Yeah. So CGR, and it's been assessed in every single country around the world, and the UK is just over 7%, but the actual metric averagely across the world is 7%. So that's we are literally still a linear economy, and yet we talk about this stuff now. It's become a big buzzword: circular economy, sustainability, all of these things. And yet we're still 7% circular. So we've got this massive opportunity actually to do way better. But it starts in the design. It starts with, repairability. So all we're doing was we're dealing with legacy of, well, let's just get rid of it. I don't need it anymore. Has it been written off? Have we had it long enough? So there's no, it's worthless. So we're going to treat it as worthless. But actually, that's the wrong thing to do. if you just want to do the right thing, there's digital poverty in every country in the world. So we still need devices out there, and there's still a shortage in the UK. I'm part of a consortium called the Next Path Device Consortium, and we are thinking, because the data is so poor, we're thinking it could be 3 million people in the UK alone still don't have access to a digital device. And you think of the ramifications of that in terms of just all the big economic GDP or whatever it is, and the tax elements. There could be massive savings there if we were strategic at the point of, I'm getting rid of this hardware and this equipment in your business. So that's the right thing to do and the good thing. But yet we still see, in a majority, let's just use the stats around circular economy, we're still seeing 93% of businesses just throw stuff away, right? And there's only 7%. So there is a good side to this story. There are people, and I've got one county council at the moment, and the way that they've looked after the hardware, the way that they've treated it, there was BIOS password. So they made sure, after talking with us and on our negotiation around our contract, was that they've obviously then dealt with the BIOS password. So we now have a device that's we were able to reuse. Yep. Now that could be a reuse internally, or it could be a reuse externally. The power of that is that's brilliant model with a little bit of care and due diligence and ownership in a business. We can get to that, and that's the difference that breaks your heart. Really, is still that mentality of throwaway culture. And I want to say the next generation are going to be better, because they get it, right? They're quite used to, a phone like this is buying secondhand because they're so dear. So they're kind of used to it, but I'm not even sure. It depends on the ESG profile. So I look at ESG in companies to see where they're at, because actually I can tell that they're a progressive moving business that care. So therefore, okay, I'd love to, be or have you as a client, and it takes a lot of effort to get to that point.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier, right, as well. So it's the effort. No one wants to do end user compute. It's not sexy, but every business has to have it. So it doesn't matter if you're a sausage factory, milk delivery, or building world-class platforms. You need to do it, and there are people that do it well. There are people that don't do it so well, and ultimately they're costing themselves, because if they do it well, there is all that residual value to be had for them, but also the follow-on effect that they could have passing that device on to others. I mean, there are some OEMs who you were saying the manufacturing process is being reviewed, and I was with some OEMs a few years ago now and started to see some of the repairability coming into their devices. Still got a very long way to go, don't get me wrong.
It's really scary.
And actually that's the point. So again, if we go back to having the data to understand what's going on, don't throw out a device because it's underperforming. Maybe it's underperforming because there's just not enough resources, and actually you could drop in a little bit more memory and then extend the life
100%.
For another year or two. And actually, I mean, we've seen organizations now that have been running their devices for 5 years, but the metrics are showing that's fine. And actually, if people aren't complaining, by all means, let it run.
No, so where I'm using mindsets as personas for companies, and so you can absolutely see just in the language that a client will use is they've just got a linear mindset, right? They just have. And so the other bit is when you explain about circular economy, and sometimes people haven't heard of it, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and what they're doing, and there's others now and other bodies, people are surprised. Oh, I didn't realize you could do that. Can you actually manufacture from recycled steel? Oh my God, we've been doing this decades, and it's that sort of education. So I do feel on our side is, we need to educate our customers more and more as they have the bandwidth to obviously respond to us and with us. But I need to bring everything that we do and deliver as a service. I need to bring it to life, and that's why the reporting is so critical to us.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some numbers down here. Unfortunately, I do have to look down, so I'm not going to remember these.
There's lots.
But 20 and 40% of residual value is potentially lost in some of those devices, and I've got some
at a minimum.
I've got some metrics kind of further down where I was going to talk about kind of why that. 20 to 30% reduced carbon, embodied carbon, if you extend the life for a year.
100%.
And that's very simple to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I've seen in some clients is this overlap of the departments actually communicating, and it's like the classic Venn diagram, isn't it? But tech doesn't speak to ESG, and ESG doesn't understand tech, and
or ESG doesn't even exist because it's a part-time role.
Absolutely,
the board have only just kind of really thought about putting it.
And then you get some tech people that actually care about ESG, so they're trying, but it's not their responsibility. They've created a tribe and they're doing it. There's no structure or contract to it. They're just doing it out of the goodness of their hearts and things. So you get this kind of, and I'm like, okay, but if we brought these guys in and we brought these guys in, and especially C-level, so the C-suite, almost, helicopter view, needs to take ownership and proactively support and push, and then these guys can get to work. But that overlap is really important, and it galvanizes the teams. It gives empowerment to make those decisions. Whereas if we continue down the archetypical procurement routes, which is cheapest wins, you know what I mean, and then we're never going to progress. So it is helping, I think, by educating. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of work outside the realms of their roles, and investing in how you report and how you better your service ultimately, because we've all got a job. Is net zero even possible? I just use the word decarbonize. It's you've got to reduce, and every single year. But how are you doing it in your world versus then the company's macro? That's
really what's changing is people are having to. So it's always been something that was nice to have, but now with legislation in place, there is no alternative, and you're going to have to do it. And there are shortcuts, and I think that's what people have generally done up until this point. But with something like the CSRD, thank you,
Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive.
So with that coming in, there is no choice. You have to do it, otherwise you'll be in breach of that, and ultimately potential significant fines. So I think that's the point now, why it's such a talking point, where in the past it hasn't, and it's always just been a kind of nice to have.
I agree. And some of those metrics, just so you're aware, is as well, it's obviously from a technology standpoint, you look at the CIO, but actually the responsibility around the reporting of this stuff is with the CFO.
I've got the CEO have now been putting it on the
definitely, but the CFO is the one that it's like handing in a tax return. So it's a similar thing. So it's fallen in their bucket, if you like. So again, it's the different areas in the board level is overlapping, and that can only be a good thing as well.
I agree. So there is a poll that's been put up on screen. So really, here is, how do you decide today how you refresh devices? And then what we'll do, we'll kind of sum up some of this as well, because there is a way, and say that it doesn't necessarily always need to be the right way, and it could be earlier as well, when the metrics are, if you're leveraging metrics, identify that devices underperforming should be replaced earlier.
So do you obviously see quite a lot of poor experience happening, and they still push ahead with the refresh? Have you got examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, so I can't touch on it earlier. If you've got a developer, right, and this is the early refresh cycle, don't just wait. If you see the metrics, act on it, and that's really what people do. And nowadays, with a lot of people working as hybrid nowadays, they're less kind of in proximity to their IT team, so they generally silence, and there doesn't need to be a reason to do that.
I was actually quite shocked in a council that I was talking to. I sort of thinking the neighborhood, and I was going, even if they're working at home, it's no problem logistically from a carbon saving. They were like, no, they moved, because of COVID.
Yeah.
They're actually in, if it was in the south as an example, they're in the north. I'm like, oh my God,
there's so many people that have done that. Yeah. In fact, I read just this morning, a very large tech company is now mandated from February next year, 5 days a week for all staff.
Not surprised.
So we've kind of touched on it already. So that was the kind of history. So we've seen what happens already. Now, why is it changing? So we've mentioned the CSRD. And basically around about 50,000 organizations are going to be required to or mandated to report on that information. So they need to find it. Have they got it today? Potentially not. And it's people like yourselves that can provide that information. There's all that Scope 3 reporting that is now becoming much more visible. And we were talking to a partner earlier as well, potentially to help us as well get lots more access to that data. So it's just no longer the burden of reporting, and actually just becomes part of BAU. And I think that's really exciting for me, because it means that the service that we provide and is across the whole business is just going to be so much more accessible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the beauty about Scope 3 for me, when I started to sort of study this, and I had some great people that sort of educated me in English and plain, it's almost carbon literacy. That Scope 3 was great, because one of the reasons this is becoming more and more apparent is, if you want to be my customer in the future, you need to report on this. Because it's in the Scope 3. So Scope 1 and 2 is in, kind of an internal element. Scope 3, which could be 99% of your carbon emissions, is in your entire supply chain. So from manufacturing to purchase to whatever it is, it's in. And so the people that you are trusting and buying off now need to report for you in the future. There's certain years now that Scope 3 was mandatory. And actually most people that understood it, it was kind of like Scope 1 and 2, I've done it, it's great, I'm buying renewable energy, I'm all good, I'm net zero. And it's like, whoa, now you can't actually say these things anymore, because and so I remember in 21 it was, so 4 years ago, I would be, if I could hold up a board saying make Scope 3 mandatory, because that's when it really, you see the impact of decarbonizing, because goodness knows how many suppliers companies have. I mean, thousands potentially. So those data sets coming in now, when it becomes mandatory and you have to report, and there are elements of looking at it and going, where's my biggest saving? It's buying goods and services, which is, frankly, is buying tech, right? Most of the biggest Scope 3, let's just say in the financial services sector, will be, your end user device compute. How many monitors have you got? That's a big carbon saving. Do you need so many? But there's your one tech domain, and then data center, that's just whirling away 24/7. I mean, those are your biggest probably Scope 3 emission. So okay, we're going to go after this, because there's 15 categories. Go after this category, which is going to dramatically say everything else, will come to in time. So for me, I was lobbying early doors. We have to make this mandatory.
Well, interesting. I mean, you mentioned there the data center. So the data center have made huge strides in basically being much more efficient, right? But nothing has changed.
No.
In the 28 years I've been using it, nothing has changed on the devices.
No.
Manufacturing may have got a little bit more efficient. There's a huge push now to make the devices more energy efficient, but how organizations manage them hasn't changed one iota. And that's really what we're trying to do now, is re-educate and understand how people are using it, when to make the right decisions on replacing, and move on from there.
I guess the technology forces that as well, with the changes moving forward and the supports that companies have, and the software and support and all that kind of changes it, doesn't it? And now the power element, in your chip versus,
exactly.
obviously buying renewable. That's a game changer right there, to be, to do these transformations, which is, some companies just seem to be in the constant cycle of a transformation.
So with that, then, you meet senior leaders within businesses, CEOs, CFOs, and CIOs, and the like. So, what are they telling you about their plans for sustainability, or what are you advising them in the future?
Yeah, I think there's an element where they're kind of sort of they don't want to come out and say I'm doing X and I've got it all covered and sorted. They're almost saying, I know we've got a lot to do and a lot to prove. I've got to set this up. How can you help? How can you help me? And so again, you're through this phase of evolution of education and getting to know that client deeper and wider, understand what's coming. And sometimes you get these contracts which are 3 years and you might have a +1, but 3 years is nothing, unfortunately. I could probably do zero revenue with a customer, just getting to know them, and then bang, we're into quite a strategic refresh, and it's all planned and off we go. Well, I'm out of contract by then. So I'm trying to push for longer term commitments. I almost feel like, if you're buying a third party cloud, you will go for a 7 to 10 year contract, won't you? So what's the difference? If you're investing in companies and they tick all the boxes, right? They've got an ESG profile and they tick those boxes is for you to be a supplier. And then you kind of give them 3 years and they haven't done anything, and they've invested and they've lost all that investment now. So I'm pushing for just a longer term view and a longer term contract. I mean, the biggest example I've got is obviously BT. BT with the copper network, with the PSTN. That is a long term contract, if you like, because once it's turned off in February in 2026, which is now another year cycle, then everything's dead. Literally the copper network has to go. So that is a long tail, because that's in the UK, that's thousands of buildings that suppliers have to go and then what we call it the urban mine, is create the urban mine, go and retrieve, recover and process, and then turn it back into its critical raw materials, which is exactly what we do. So I'm really interested, because again, this collaboration across the teams, people only get focused when it's really on the horizon and it's coming. Everyone was pushing for net zero by 2030, then they pushed it out to 2045 because they realized how difficult that's going to be.
Bigger.
Yeah, but also your emissions go up the more you scale and the more you grow. And we're in a society where we're all looking for growth. We all want to grow and get bigger. The more you grow and get bigger, the more your carbon emissions go up. So your challenge just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, hence why those dates get pushed out. But for me, a CIO just wants visibility. They want to understand how you can bring what we do to life. So it's I view, I mean, not many people will know, we talked about the 3 Ps earlier, the triple bottom line, which is profit, obviously number one, and then people and planet. Doing as a Venn diagram to it sounds awful, not tick those boxes, because that's where the linear economy's been. I've ticked the box, I'm zero to landfill, I've sorted it. You haven't. Is almost that triple bottom line is still the holy grail. But they want visibility. They want to understand that you're helping them decarbonize, and realistically, ours is relatively straightforward in that by reducing and consolidating, improving it. I went to talk to you about the 3 Ps, but we've spoken about scope 1, scope 2 and 3. There is a scope 4 emission, which is avoidance. And so my element to that is, while it's not a mandatory field, this avoidance, or it's a way of reducing. So traditionally we've done X, which could be, in our world now with my bioscope hat on, traditionally it would be, we will from a UK perspective, we'll export it and we'll get other countries to refine it, which involves very high carbon intensive, high energy burning, and the use of acids to break down this stuff. So
and all the logistics to get the stuff there.
100%. you can't fly it there, but it's on a boat, it takes time, and it's quite a considerable cost. And we're talking about containers. I mean, I every time I go to a port and I see these container ships, I'm like, oh my goodness, like 17,000 containers on one boat. It's insane. But so that traditional element has a carbon emission that nobody's reporting on. So you have to kind of give that context. What is that? And then if we're able to reduce that by the methodology that we have using bacteria to break down the metals, and it's interesting you use the closed loop analogy, because we're building a plant that is closed loop, so everything gets reused. So when things are being flushed through, the water, the bacteria, the solvents, they get reused, and it has to be cyclical. So then you're not just like a data center, you're not just throwing, water comes in and it goes out and it's lost. This all has to be closed loop and reused. So you're showing a saving. So it's almost this avoidance scope 4 factor. By changing suppliers, you've done that. Now everyone needs to do that. But how many innovative businesses are out there that can prove traditional versus traditional? It could be traditional manufacturing. In fact, I know of companies looking at their manufacturing, and just a simple fact was certain manufacturing plants in China were using fossil fuels versus a company using renewable power. That's one saving. But the metrics, they could look at 5 manufacturers and go, well, theirs are up here, their carbon emissions, these are going down. Well, we're going to change and we're going to go to these guys because it's now I've avoided this emission. So that is all coming, and it's like anything, whatever device you use and how you use it, all of these metrics, you need to make strategic decisions and be strategic, but rather than the classic react, I've got a budget, I need to spend it. What does everyone want? Oh, I'm going to go with this. Bang, out it goes. And no reporting on any sort of productivity or user experience, which frankly is hit and miss at the end of the day. So,
I mean, so where do you see the future going? Like, and how? I mean, you've talked a little bit about that, extensively about that now.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about
but
that.
it's gonna go beyond, right? Because there's the stepping stones that we're now starting to actually deliver on, but in very small scale, needs to expand. Everyone needs to be involved. What has to change for that to happen?
I think proof points have to be administered, and the departments need to work out how they're going to decarbonize, and I think a lot of companies are sold to so much, right? They just sold. Buy me, whether it's tooling, whether it's whether it's hardware, kit, solutions, whatever it is. And it's really hard to work out who's right and who's wrong. And so there's an element here where I believe the future leaders, the CIOs, are becoming educated around sustainability and understand it. So they want to buy circular and sustainable products.
Well, they're also being kind of mandated.
Well,
Gartner was saying that the CIOs are responsible now for that, or will 100%. Be by 2027, right? 100%. Ultimately, paid on, like being
well, that's when it really changes, when you're remunerated to do that. But again, when it comes back to that first P, which is profit, that's the challenge. There's this kind of tipping point of, well, everything I'm trying to buy that's more sustainable is more expensive, and at some point, does it get to a factor where it's level, and then you change, and then there's nothing to lose? Or do you take the hit on the investment, and then it's going to, you've got to prove that actually it's got a return on investment in the future, in the next 5 years? So again, it's that strategic long-term view, and how long is your life cycle? Is it 3, 4, 5 years? And just trying to understand, and it's frankly, at the moment, with the lack of data, it is finger in the air, and you are being sold to that. But they have to report now in the life of that product, and actually how long it lasts, and then that will dictate, have they been missold to again, and nothing's ever changed, right? So then then you know more, you're more educated. So the next tranche of the transformation, you are literally hoping and praying that that product that you're going to invest in is better, is going to last longer, is more repairable, and therefore it is a better return on investment. So I think that's the cycle we're in. We're in this. We've had the COVID period where we've thrown everything at everyone. Just
well, to be honest, there was a complete refresh anyway.
No, exactly.
Most people had desktops, right? So,
but it was expensive, right? It was an expensive refresh,
and compounded by the component shortages.
Yeah. No, and so but no one had ever experienced that previously, and not that I'm aware of. I am old, but I'm not that experienced in terms of the decades of tech. But again, the advancements of the tech are getting better and better and better. Yeah. Using a laptop with a touchscreen was unheard of 10 years ago. It just didn't ever happen. So the advancements of your user experience are getting better. There is competition out there. So who is the best? And I think that's where it's really important is, who do you believe in the marketplace, who is actually properly measuring, from and this is where I think we've got a major opportunity is, the way the assessments are done it's virgin source material first and foremost. So mining is a big critical element to this. The UK literally 2 days ago published their strategy around critical raw materials, which it kind of comes into where we are, because we are now producing pure gold and copper from from material that's already been mined. So it is a secondary source material. Now that clearly has a lower carbon emission all of a sudden if you're putting it back into manufacturing. Now the OEMs are claiming we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and some of them, fair play, do measure how far they've come. So they're doing it in percentages. So some of them have a circular economy measurement, and some of the OEMs are 16%. Let's just say, finger in the air, 16%. So there's still a long way to go. So all of this talk, how much are they investing? How quickly? Because they could do it quickly if they really, really wanted to push it. I know it's complex and difficult around the supply chain and the contracts and how they've done it and how to change that. But I've had conversations with people who have sustainability in their title, are product specialists. And when I've said to them, I am producing gold, would you like to buy our pure gold and it's a secondary source, so it's going to reduce, can you buy it for your, let's just say, chip? They don't even have a clue. No idea. I don't know. I'd have to go out and find. So we're still not even at the almost circular mindset. We're still in that linear mindset because that's what we've always done. So it's going to take a massive shift. I can't underestimate how big a shift it is. And so at the moment we are bereft of, we're going to do this, we'll get to that, but you need to judge who is actually getting there closer and closer and closer. And we're one company, we haven't perfected it yet, but my goodness me, I can guarantee you, and I can show you and be transparent how much we've invested to get to there. I'm not saying we've got it sorted yet, we haven't, but we are a majority of the way there. We're ahead of anyone else, and it's cost us this much, so I can prove it to you, right? So do you believe me or you don't? And do you not, I've got the finished article, buy me now, because that doesn't exist anywhere in the market.
And I mean, none of this is a light switch anyway. You don't just turn it on and become completely consuming reused materials.
No.
And anyone that knows me knows I'm a big data fan. So I think data is one of the key components of, from your end, but also from the reporting end and the usability end of those devices. And I think that is going to be the differentiator for those that do it well, because they can understand when they should be doing certain decisions, i.e. replacing a device, but then also what was the impact? So did they make the right decision, and validate and then learn on that and then take that further?
Which is exactly what you're providing, right? So you are providing that evidence to say, strategy wise, because most of the time it's a sort of fixed refresh model, isn't it? That's
most people we speak to, whenever we start a conversation, have a traditional time-based refresh.
We've always done it this way, and they've got the budget,
and partly some of it might be to do with they actually don't have any other data sources to give them enough to make an informed decision on a refresh cycle. Others because, hey, you know what, it ties up with the warranty. If it fails during that, then I'm covered, that's fine. And then when it expires, I'll just get another one. Just simple, like I say, no one wants to do this stuff. So just make it simple as possible. And yeah, that validation, I think, is a missing kind of key component of when, why, okay, great, it works, learn and then take it forward.
I've only had one experience of one client that when I messaged them and they were buying, say it's 2,000 laptops. I said, would you like to see some carbon measurements of the different specs that you've got of the different OEMs? Would you like to see some carbon measurements? I'll give you the data that's gone in there. It's through a partner of ours, KA2. And when we did it, there was one specific device that won. And if they were all the same price, which one are you going to go for? That's the question. And they loved that opportunity. And so they did choose the lowest carbon rating device. And it happened
cost a little more. It cost a little more?
It did cost a little bit more, but they would have, in the old procurement, they would have gone down the cheapest line necessarily. But my point being is if you get an average price and everything's well, so which one are you going to choose? Are you going to be a sustainable procured method, or are you just going to go,
well, that's an interesting question.
I've got a better relation.
Well, will sustainability metrics form part of a scoring criteria in RFIs and RFPs, or are you seeing that already?
Seeing it already. Yeah, and the bit is they've always been in, but it's been a very low percentage. And then even though it's a low percentage, and there's a lot of marketing, I'm good at this, by the way, marketing fudge. They didn't know how to market, so they just went, oh, that sounds brilliant, 10%, 10 points. So then if you're skewed in your, in terms of your decision making with other and they're all the same, then that could skew it, right? But actually it's all nonsense. So now it's gone up. So the last tender I did was upwards of 20, I'm going to say 30%. And it was very stringent, and it had in the ITT, it had percentages that you are now going to claim you're going to help them reduce, and you're going to have these targets. What are they? And so now if that contract starts, then you've got to prove it. You've got to prove it. And how are you going to do that? And so obviously tooling that's why I'm intrigued by, I've got an obsession with, reducing carbon metrics around recycling and refining. And the next bit is proving it. And where do you put the data to prove it, to model for the future companies, model what they're strategically who they're going to use in their supply chain, and what methods they're going to adopt and procure in the future. Because frankly, it's still in early stages. But what I'm pleased about is the fact that the percentages have gone up, the education's gone up in the procurement, and the departments, whether it's tech or sustainability, actually know as well. So they're part of the decision. So it's not just procurement; it's all of these guys making the decisions. So there seems to be a teamwork here. Got to do better. They're so bored of buying the same stuff over and over, especially public sector money. They're so bored of seeing the same old results happening with the same old people, and they want change, and you've got to prove it. So I'm actually really positive about the future, ITTs, tenders, RFPs. I think you've got people there that care, that are really educated, and they're gonna hold you to court.
Cool. I can't believe where the time has gone. We've had 45 minutes, and we
burned through
45 minutes. So I do just want to kind of wrap up here. So there was kind of 3 real core takeaway messages there, and so we'll follow up with a playbook as well, and we'll grab some of those references that you mentioned as well, Andy. So thanks for that. But zero waste end user compute for me, at least, and it sounds like we are
very
aligned. Is nothing wasted. So no money having that residual value off the back of it, or just reutilizing it internally or extending the life because you don't need to replace it. You're not wasting carbon. You're reutilizing and resharing when you can, and you're not wasting people's time as well, because that ultimately is still waste. So having the data, making those devices live longer, I think that's going to be key. We've touched on that before, and I think both you and I, we do close the loop. We cover that whole kind of cradle to grave view of end user compute. So really, this takeaway from me, from you, is let's work together. If there are particular sustainability workshops, if you need to understand what's going on in your energy computer estate, yeah, we both can help you with data, metrics, carbon refresh plans. Yeah, so with that, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we didn't have any questions that I'm aware of. I am going to have to lean forward just to see if there is anything that I need to touch on. I can see someone's writing. But yeah, no, thank you, Andy.
Yeah,
It's been
pleasure.
a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Yeah, we'll follow up if there's any questions. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.